HPHBGN says, there's something fascinating that happens when you step back, when you stop chasing, when you finally, after all this time, decide to put down the phone, close the message app, and just breathe. And I want to talk to you today about something that most people are afraid to do, something that goes against every instinct you have when you care deeply about someone. I want to talk to you about the power of absence, the strength in silence, and what truly happens when you stop contacting a man who has taken your presence for granted. But before we dive deep into this, let me ask you something. How many of you have found yourselves checking your phone every 5 minutes, waiting for a text that never comes, crafting the perfect message, deleting it, rewriting it, and then sitting there with your finger hovering over the send button? How many of you have felt that knot in your stomach, that anxiety that comes from wondering if he's thinking about you the way you're thinking about him? I see you nodding. I know this feeling. We all do. There's an old story I want to share with you. In ancient China, there was a student who came to his master, desperate and exhausted. This student had been practicing meditation for years, trying so hard to achieve enlightenment, to find peace, to understand the universe. Every day, he would sit for hours, straining, forcing, pushing himself to reach some higher state of consciousness. One day, the master found him in the meditation hall, his face red with effort, sweat pouring down his forehead. The master smiled and said, "Tell me, student, when you tune a string on a musical instrument, what happens if you pull it too tight?" The student replied, "It breaks, master." The master nodded. "And what happens if you leave it too loose?" The student answered, "It makes no sound, master." The master then said, "Exactly. The perfect sound comes from the middle way, not too tight, not too loose. Balance. This ancient wisdom applies to everything in life, especially to relationships. You see, when you're constantly contacting someone, constantly available, constantly there, you're pulling that string too tight. And what happens? Eventually, something breaks. Either the relationship snaps under the pressure of your neediness, or you break yourself trying to hold everything together. But when you step back, when you create space, when you stop contacting him, something magical begins to happen. 4 very specific things, actually. And I'm going to share all 4 with you today, not as manipulation tactics, not as games, but as natural consequences of human psychology and the universal laws that govern all relationships. The first thing that happens when you stop contacting a man is this: he notices your absence. Now, I know what you're thinking. Of course he notices. That's obvious. But let me explain what I really mean by this, because it goes so much deeper than you might imagine. When you're always there, always available, always reaching out, your presence becomes like the air he breathes. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't appreciate it. He doesn't even notice it because it's just always there. It's like the sound of the refrigerator humming in your kitchen. After a while, your brain filters it out completely. You don't hear it anymore, even though it's always making noise. But what happens when that refrigerator suddenly stops humming? You notice immediately, don't you? The silence becomes deafening. That's exactly what happens in his mind and heart when you stop reaching out. Suddenly, there's this void, this absence where your energy used to be, and human beings are wired to notice changes in their environment. We're pattern recognition machines. When a pattern breaks, our brain immediately focuses on it, tries to understand it, tries to make sense of it. I remember working with a woman, let's call her Sarah, who came to me absolutely heartbroken. She had been in a relationship with a man for 2 years, and over time, she noticed he was becoming more and more distant. He would take hours, sometimes days, to respond to her messages. He canceled plans. He seemed distracted when they were together. And Sarah, like many of us would do, tried to fix it by reaching out more. She sent good morning texts, good night texts, asked how his day was going, tried to make plans, sent him articles she thought he'd like, funny memes, everything she could think of to maintain that connection. And you know what happened? He pulled away even more. When she came to me, I told her something that shocked her. I said, stop contacting him completely. Not as punishment, not as a game, but as a gift to yourself. Give yourself the space to remember who you are without him, and give him the space to remember who you are to him. She looked at me like I was crazy. She said, but if I stop reaching out, we'll have no relationship at all. He never contacts me first anymore. And I said, then you need to know that. You need to see what's really there when you stop building the bridge from your side. She took my advice, and for 2 weeks, she didn't send a single message. And something fascinating happened. On day 3, he sent a casual text. Hey, how's it going? She didn't respond immediately. She was living her life, rediscovering her own interests, spending time with friends. On day 5, he called. She didn't answer right away. On day 8, he showed up at her door. And when she finally spoke to him, do you know what he said? He said, I felt like something was missing. I realized I hadn't heard from you, and it made me think about how much you actually do reach out, how much you actually care, and how much I've been taking that for granted. This is the power of absence. It creates awareness. When you stop contacting a man, he suddenly becomes aware of all the ways you were present in his life. Every text message you sent, every phone call you made, every plan you initiated, every moment of affection you gave, all of it suddenly becomes visible to him because now it's gone. It's like when you have perfect health and you never think about it, but the moment you get sick, you realize how precious health is. Your presence, your energy, your love, these are precious things. But sometimes people need to experience their absence to truly value them. The second thing that happens when you stop contacting a man is this: he begins to question himself and his value in your life. This is where things get really interesting from a psychological perspective. You see, humans have this deep need to feel significant, to feel valued, to feel like they matter in other people's lives. It's one of our core psychological needs. When you're always reaching out, always initiating contact, always showing interest, you're constantly confirming his significance in your life. He knows, without any doubt, that he matters to you. He knows you're thinking about him. He knows you want him. But when you stop, when that confirmation suddenly disappears, something shifts in his mind. He starts to wonder, does she still care? Is she thinking about me? Have I lost my place in her life? Is there someone else? And here's what most people don't understand. This isn't about making him insecure or playing with his emotions. This is about creating a natural balance in the relationship. Because the truth is, if he never has to question whether you'll be there, if he never has to wonder if you might lose interest, if he never has to put in any effort to maintain the connection, then he has no reason to value what you have together. Think about it this way. Imagine you have a friend who is always available whenever you need them. They drop everything for you. They're always there. They never say no. They never have anything else going on. At first, you might think, whoa, what a great friend. But over time, something changes. You start to take them for granted. You assume they'll always be there, so you don't make as much effort. You cancel plans because you know they'll understand. You don't call them back right away because you know they'll always be available later. This friend's constant availability has actually decreased their value in your eyes, not because you're a bad person, but because that's just how human psychology works. But now imagine a different friend, someone who has their own life, their own interests, their own boundaries. Someone who is there for you when it really matters, but who also says no sometimes, who has other commitments, who can't always drop everything. This friend's time becomes more valuable to you because you know it's not unlimited. When they make time for you, you appreciate it more. You make an effort to maintain that friendship because you know it's not guaranteed. The same principle applies in romantic relationships. When you stop contacting a man, when you create that space, you force him to question his position in your life. And that questioning is healthy. It makes him think, what does she think of me? Does she still want this? What do I need to do to maintain this connection? And these questions lead to action. They lead to effort. They lead to him stepping up and actually pursuing you rather than just passively receiving your attention. I worked with another woman, let's call her Maria, who had the opposite problem from Sarah. Maria was in a relationship where the man seemed interested, but only on his terms. He would disappear for days, then suddenly show up wanting to spend time together. He would be affectionate and attentive one week, then cold and distant the next. And Maria, wanting to keep the connection alive, would always be there when he reached out. She would always respond, always make herself available, always adapt to his schedule and his moods. One day, after another cycle of him disappearing and reappearing, I asked Maria a simple question. What would happen if the next time he reaches out after disappearing, you're not available? Not because you're playing a game, but because you've genuinely filled your life with other things that matter to you. She thought about it and realized that she had been so focused on being available for him that she had neglected her own life, her own friends, her own interests, her own goals. So she made a change. She started taking a painting class she had always wanted to try. She reconnected with old friends. She started going to yoga every morning. She filled her life with things that brought her joy and fulfillment independent of him. And the next time he reached out after one of his disappearing acts, she wasn't available. She was genuinely busy. She had plans. She had a life. And something shifted. He started reaching out more frequently. He started making plans in advance rather than expecting her to always be free. He started putting in effort. Why? Because he began to question his value in her life. He realized that if he wanted to be part of her world, he needed to actually earn that place. The third thing that happens when you stop contacting a man is this: he experiences the natural consequences of his actions or inactions. This is perhaps the most important point, and it's rooted in a fundamental truth about human behavior. We learn through consequences. When a child touches a hot stove and gets burned, they learn not to touch hot stoves. When we work hard and achieve success, we learn that effort leads to results. When we treat people poorly and they walk away, we learn that our actions have consequences. In relationships, we often try to protect people from the natural consequences of their behavior, and in doing so, we prevent them from learning and growing. If a man is taking you for granted, being inconsistent, not putting in effort, or treating you as an option rather than a priority, and you continue to be there, continue to reach out, continue to give him your time and energy, what is he learning? He's learning that he can behave this way without any consequences. He's learning that no matter how little effort he puts in, you'll still be there. He's learning that your presence, your attention, your love are things he doesn't have to work for or appreciate because they're guaranteed. But when you stop contacting him, when you pull back your energy and attention, he experiences the natural consequence of his behavior. The consequence is your absence. The consequence is the loss of connection. The consequence is the realization that if he doesn't value what you bring to his life, he might lose it completely. And this consequence is not punishment. It's not revenge. It's simply reality. It's the natural order of things. If you don't water a plant, it withers. If you don't maintain a friendship, it fades. If you don't nurture a relationship, it dies. There's a beautiful teaching in Zen Buddhism about cause and effect, what they call karma. But karma isn't some mystical force of reward and punishment from the universe. Karma is simply the natural law of cause and effect. Every action creates a result. Every cause has an effect. When you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree, not an orange tree. This is karma. This is natural law. And it applies to relationships just as much as it applies to everything else in life. Let me tell you about a man I knew. Let's call him David. David was in a relationship with a woman who loved him deeply. She was kind, supportive, always there for him. But David, like many people, took this for granted. He was pursuing his career, focused on his goals, and he assumed she would always be there waiting for him. He would cancel dates for work meetings. He would forget to call when he said he would. He would be on his phone when they were together. He wasn't doing anything terrible. He wasn't cheating or being cruel. He was just being thoughtless. He was taking her presence for granted, and his partner, bless her heart, kept trying to make it work. She would express her needs gently. She would plan special dates to remind him of what they had. She would send loving messages. She was doing everything she could to maintain the connection, to compensate for his lack of effort. And because she was doing all this, David never experienced the consequence of his behavior. The relationship kept functioning, so he thought everything was fine. Until one day, she stopped. She didn't make a big announcement. She didn't have a dramatic breakup conversation. She simply stopped reaching out. She stopped initiating plans. She stopped sending those loving messages. She stopped trying to maintain something that he wasn't helping to build. And David, busy with his life, didn't notice immediately. A few days went by, then a week, then 2 weeks. And slowly it started to dawn on him that something was different. She wasn't there anymore, not in the same way. He reached out, expecting everything to be as it was, but it wasn't. She was polite but distant. She had plans when he wanted to see her. She wasn't as responsive to his messages. And for the first time, David experienced the consequence of his behavior. He felt the loss. He felt the absence. He felt what it was like to be on the other side, to be the one reaching out, to be the one wondering if the other person still cared. And this experience changed him. It made him realize what he had been taking for granted. It made him understand that relationships require effort from both people, not just one. Now, did she eventually give him another chance? Yes, she did. But not until he demonstrated, through consistent action over time, that he understood what went wrong and was committed to doing better. And their relationship became stronger because of this experience. Not despite the pain of separation, but because of it. Because he learned through natural consequences what it means to value someone and to show up in a relationship. This is what happens when you stop contacting a man. You allow him to experience the natural consequence of his actions or inactions. You allow reality to be his teacher. And this is not cruel. This is not punishment. This is actually one of the most loving things you can do, both for him and for yourself. Because you're giving him the opportunity to grow, to learn, to become a better partner. And you're honoring yourself by refusing to accept less than you deserve. The fourth thing that happens when you stop contacting a man, and this is perhaps the most profound, is that you reclaim your own power and rediscover who you are beyond the relationship. This is the transformation that happens within you, and it's the most important of all. Because while the first three things are about what happens with him, this fourth thing is about what happens with you. And ultimately, that's what really matters. When you're constantly focused on someone else, constantly reaching out, constantly trying to maintain a connection, constantly thinking about them, you lose touch with yourself. Your identity becomes wrapped up in the relationship. Your happiness becomes dependent on his responses, his attention, his validation. Your energy flows outward toward him, and there's nothing left for you. You become like a cup that's constantly being poured out, but never refilled. Eventually, you have nothing left to give, not to him and not to yourself. But when you stop contacting him, when you pull back that energy, something beautiful begins to happen. That energy that was flowing outward toward him starts to flow back toward you. You start to remember who you were before this relationship. You start to reconnect with your own interests, your own passions, your own dreams, your own friends, your own life. You start to fill your own cup again. And as you do this, you realize something profoundly. You are complete on your own. Your worth doesn't depend on his attention. Your happiness doesn't depend on his validation. Your life doesn't revolve around him. This is true power. Not power over someone else, but power within yourself. The power to be okay regardless of what he does or doesn't do. The power to choose what you will and won't accept in a relationship. The power to walk away if something doesn't serve you. The power to be whole on your own. I remember a teaching from the monastery that has stayed with me all these years. The master used to say, a tree doesn't worry if the wind blows or doesn't blow. It stands firm in its own roots. The wind may move its branches, may rustle its leaves, but the tree remains the tree. It doesn't chase the wind. It doesn't need the wind to validate its existence. It simply stands rooted in the earth, connected to its own source. This is the kind of inner strength we must cultivate. We must be like the tree, rooted in our own sense of self, not dependent on external forces for our stability and worth. When you stop contacting a man and turn your attention back to yourself, you begin this process of rooting. You begin to ask yourself important questions. Who am I beyond this relationship? What brings me joy? What are my goals? What do I value? What kind of life do I want to create? What kind of partner do I actually deserve? And as you answer these questions, as you take action on your own behalf, as you build a life that fulfills you independently of any romantic relationship, you become magnetic. This is the great paradox. When you stop chasing, when you stop needing, when you stop trying to hold on so tightly, you become more attractive. Not because you're playing hard to get, not because you're being manipulative, but because you become a person with their own life, their own energy, their own light. And people are naturally attracted to that. They're attracted to someone who is whole, who is grounded, who is secure in themselves. Let me share with you one final story. There was a woman I'll call Lisa, who came to me in a state of complete desperation. She had been in and on again, off again relationship for 3 years. Every time they broke up, she would be devastated. She would spend weeks crying, barely eating, unable to focus on anything else. And every time he came back, she would take him back immediately, grateful for another chance, willing to overlook all the reasons they broke up in the first place. This cycle had repeated itself 5 times over 3 years, and Lisa was exhausted. She was anxious all the time, depressed, couldn't sleep, had gained weight, had lost interest in her career, had drifted away from her friends. Her entire life had become about this relationship, about trying to make it work, about trying to be enough for him. When she came to me, I could see that she had lost herself completely. So I gave her a challenge. I said, for the next 90 days, you are not going to contact him at all. Not a text, not a call, not a social media, like nothing. But more importantly, for the next 90 days, you're going to focus entirely on yourself. You're going to treat these 90 days like a personal retreat, a journey back to yourself. She was terrified, but she agreed. During those 90 days, Lisa did something she hadn't done in years. She invested in herself. She started therapy to work through her anxiety and codependency patterns. She rejoined the gym and started taking care of her body again. She reached out to old friends she had neglected and rebuilt those relationships. She threw herself into her career and got a promotion she had been too distracted to pursue. She took up painting, something she loved as a child but had abandoned. She traveled alone to a place she had always wanted to visit. She started meditating every morning. She read books that inspired her. She journaled about her feelings, her dreams, her fears, her hopes. And something miraculous happened. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, gradually, day by day, Lisa came back to life. The light returned to her eyes. The smile returned to her face. The confidence returned to her voice. She became the woman she was always meant to be, the woman she had been before she lost herself in a relationship that wasn't serving her. Did he contact her during those 90 days? Yes, he did, multiple times. but she didn't respond. Not because she was trying to punish him or make him chase her, but because she was genuinely focused on her own healing and growth. She was busy building a life she loved. When the 90 days were up, he reached out again, wanting to get back together, promising things would be different this time. And you know what Lisa did? She said no. She said no because during those 90 days, she realized something profound. She realized that she had been so afraid of losing him that she had been willing to lose herself. She realized that the relationship she had been fighting so hard to keep was actually keeping her from being who she was meant to be. She realized that sometimes love isn't enough, that you also need respect, consistency, effort growth, and partnership. She realized that she deserved better, not better than him necessarily, but better than what that relationship was giving her. And here's the beautiful part. 6 months later, Lisa met someone else, someone who pursued her, who showed up consistently, who valued her, who appreciated her for who she was, who added to her life rather than taking from it. And she was ready for that relationship because she had done the work on herself. She had reclaimed her power. She had remembered who she was. This is what happens when you stop contacting a man and turn your attention back to yourself. You give yourself the greatest gift possible, the gift of self-discovery, self-love, self-respect, and self-sufficiency. And from that place of wholeness, you can create the kind of relationships you actually want and deserve. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Everything I've shared with you today is not about manipulation. It's not about playing games. It's not about trying to control someone else's behavior. It's not about making someone miss you or chase you or value you through tricks or tactics. That's not what this is about at all. What this is about is understanding human psychology, understanding the natural laws that govern relationships, and most importantly, understanding yourself and your own worth. When I talk about stopping contact with a man, I'm not suggesting you ghost someone who has treated you well. I'm not suggesting you use silence as a weapon or a tool of manipulation. What I'm suggesting is that you recognize when you're giving more than you're receiving, when you're investing more than the other person, when you're constantly initiating and they're passively receiving, when you're losing yourself in the process of trying to maintain a connection. And when that happens, you have the wisdom and the courage to step back. Stepping back serves multiple purposes. It gives him the space to step forward. It gives you the clarity to see what's really there when you're not propping everything up. It allows natural consequences to unfold. It gives you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself. And perhaps most importantly, it reveals the truth of the situation. Because here's something most people don't want to hear, but need to understand. If you stop reaching out and he doesn't care, if you step back and he doesn't notice or doesn't reach out himself, if your absence doesn't create any response in him, then you have learned something invaluable. You've learned that the connection you thought was there, the relationship you thought you had, wasn't real. Or at least, it wasn't reciprocal. And yes, that hurts. That truth can be painful, but it's also liberating because now you know. Now you're not wasting your time, energy, and heart on someone who isn't meeting you halfway. Now you can make an informed choice about what you want to do next. And that knowledge, as painful as it might be, is a gift. There's a concept in Buddhism called right action. Right action isn't about the outcome. It's not about manipulating circumstances to get what you want. Right action is about aligning your behavior with your values, with truth, with what's healthy and authentic, regardless of the outcome. When you stop contacting someone who is taking you for granted, when you reclaim your energy and focus on yourself, you're taking right action. You're honoring yourself. You're setting healthy boundaries. You're refusing to participate in a dynamic that diminishes you. And whatever happens after that, whatever his response or non-response might be, you can be at peace knowing you acted with integrity. Let me share with you some practical wisdom about how to actually do this, because knowing what to do and actually doing it are two very different things. The hardest part of stopping contact isn't the decision itself. It's dealing with all the feelings that come up when you're no longer distracting yourself with constant communication. When you stop reaching out, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to want to check your phone every 5 minutes. You're going to craft messages in your head. You're going to wonder what he's doing, if he's thinking about you, if you made a mistake. This is normal. This is your attachment and your habit patterns asserting themselves. This is your fear of loss and your need for validation speaking to you. And the key is not to resist these feelings, not to fight them, but to acknowledge them, to sit with them, to observe them without acting on them. This is meditation in action. This is mindfulness in practice. When the urge to contact him arises, and it will arise many times, pause, take a breath. Notice the feeling in your body. Notice the thoughts in your mind. Ask yourself, what am I really seeking right now? Am I seeking connection with him, or am I seeking relief from my own discomfort? Am I reaching out from a place of wholeness or from a place of need? And then, instead of reaching out to him, reach inward to yourself. Sit with the discomfort. Journal about what you're feeling. Call a friend. Go for a walk. Do something that nourishes you rather than something that depletes you. Each time you resist the urge to contact him and choose to nurture yourself instead, you're building your inner strength. You're rewiring your brain. You're proving to yourself that you can be okay without constant contact, without constant reassurance, without constant validation from him. And over time, it gets easier. The urges become less frequent and less intense. The anxiety lessens, the clarity increases, and you start to feel more like yourself again. Another important thing to understand is that this process isn't about a specific timeline. It's not about stopping contact for 3 days or a week or a month and then checking to see if he's learned his lesson. That's still coming from a place of manipulation and outcome-focused thinking. This is about a genuine shift in how you relate to yourself and to relationships. It's about deciding that you're going to prioritize yourself, that you're going to require reciprocity in your relationships, that you're going to fill your own cup first, and you're going to maintain these standards regardless of what any specific person does. Some of you might be wondering, but what if I stop contacting him and he never reaches out? What if I lose him? And my answer to you is this: if you stop being the one who maintains all the connection and the relationship falls apart, then you need to understand that you were never in a real relationship in the first place. You were in a one-sided dynamic where you were doing all the work. And yes, losing that hurts. But what's the alternative? To spend your life being the only one who cares, the only one who tries, the only one who invests. To slowly lose yourself, to dim your own light, to shrink yourself, all in the hope that maybe one day he'll appreciate you and start putting in effort. That's not a life. That's a prison. True love, true connection, true partnership. These things require mutual effort. They require two people who both show up, who both invest, who both care. And if stopping contact reveals that he's not willing or able to do his part, then you haven't lost something valuable. You've gained clarity. You've freed yourself to find a relationship where both people are equally committed. I want to address something else that comes up often. Some people hear this advice and think, but I don't want to be distant or cold or play games. I want to be authentic and express my feelings. And I understand this completely. Authenticity is important. But here's what you need to understand. Constantly reaching out to someone who isn't reciprocating, constantly being available to someone who takes you for granted, constantly giving to someone who doesn't give back, that's not authenticity. That's codependency. That's a habit pattern driven by fear and insecurity, not by genuine love. True authenticity means being honest about your needs and boundaries. It means recognizing when a dynamic isn't working and having the courage to change it. It means valuing yourself enough to require reciprocity. It means understanding that love without respect, without effort, without consistency isn't really love at all. And it means having the strength to walk away from situations that don't serve your highest good, even if you have feelings for the person. Stopping contact isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being clear. It's about saying, through your actions, I value myself. I require reciprocity in my relationships. I will not chase someone who doesn't choose me. I will not diminish myself to make someone else comfortable. I will not lose myself in the process of loving someone else. That's not playing. That's self-respect. Let me tell you what I've observed over many years of working with people on relationships and personal growth. The people who struggle the most in relationships are the people who have lost themselves. They're the people who define their worth by whether someone else loves them. They're the people who will tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, and neglect because they're afraid of being alone. They're the people who believe that if they just love hard enough, try hard enough, give enough, the other person will finally see their value and change. But that's not how it works. You cannot love someone into loving you back. You cannot convince someone of your worth through constant availability and effort. In fact, the more you try to prove your value to someone who doesn't see it, the more you actually decrease your value in their eyes. Because you're demonstrating that you don't value yourself. You're demonstrating that you'll accept breadcrumbs. You're demonstrating that you have no standards, no boundaries, no self-respect. On the other hand, the people who thrive in relationships are the people who are whole on their own. They're the people who know their worth and don't need constant validation from others. They're the people who have rich, fulfilling lives independent of their romantic relationships. They're the people who will walk away from a situation that doesn't serve them, even if it's painful, because they understand that protecting their own well-being is paramount. And ironically, these are the people who attract healthy, reciprocal relationships, because they're not desperate for any relationship. They're selective about the right relationship. This brings me to a crucial point. Everything I've shared with you today, all of this wisdom about stopping contact and reclaiming your power, is not ultimately about getting a man to chase you or appreciate you or commit to you. That might be a side effect, and often it is, but that's not the goal. The goal is to become a person who doesn't need those things to feel whole. The goal is to develop such a strong sense of self, such a deep connection to your own worth, such a fulfilling life of your own, that any relationship you enter is a bonus, an enhancement, not a necessity. When you reach this place, when you become this person, everything changes. You stop attracting people who take you for granted because you won't tolerate it. You stop being anxious about whether someone will text you back because your happiness doesn't depend on it. You stop losing yourself in relationships because you're too rooted in who you are to be easily uprooted. You stop settling for less than you deserve because you know your worth. And you start experiencing relationships as what they're meant to be, beautiful connections between two whole people. Not desperate entanglements between two people trying to feel complete. I often think about water when I contemplate these truths. Water is the softest element, yet it can carve through stone. Water doesn't fight, doesn't force, doesn't chase. It simply flows. If it encounters an obstacle, it doesn't beat itself against the rock over and over, trying to force its way through. It finds another path. It goes around. It goes over. And given enough time, it shapes the landscape not through force, but through persistence and patience and the quiet power of its nature. This is how you must learn to be in relationships and in life. Soft but powerful, gentle but unwavering in your direction. Not forcing, not chasing, not desperately trying to control outcomes, but flowing with the natural order of things, maintaining your integrity, staying true to yourself, and trusting that the right path will reveal itself. When you stop contacting a man and he does these 4 things, when he notices your absence, questions his value in your life, experiences consequences, and you reclaim your power, it's not magic, it's not manipulation. It's simply the natural flow of energy finding its balance. You've stopped forcing. You've stopped giving more than you receive. You've stopped chasing. And in that cessation, truth reveals itself. Either he steps up, sees your worth, and starts putting in reciprocal effort, or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, you've saved yourself months or years of giving yourself to someone who couldn't receive you properly. But here's what I need you to hear clearly, what I need to land in your heart. Whether he steps up or doesn't, whether he comes back or doesn't, whether he finally sees your value or doesn't, you win. You win because you've reconnected with yourself. You win because you've set a new standard for how you'll allow yourself to be treated. You win because you've broken the pattern of codependency and people pleasing and seeking external validation. You win because you've become stronger, clearer, more whole. And from this place of winning, from this place of wholeness, you can make empowered choices about your relationships, your life, your future. As I close, I want to leave you with a final thought. The greatest relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. Every other relationship is a reflection of this primary relationship. If you don't value yourself, you'll attract people who don't value you. If you don't respect yourself, you'll tolerate disrespect from others. If you're not whole on your own, you'll try to use relationships to fill the void, and you'll be devastated when they inevitably fail to do so. But if you value yourself, if you respect yourself, if you